Chapter 8, the Cardinal Cynicisms. Quoting Heinrich Heine's preface to Germany, A Winter's Tale. In hasty ill humour I have ripped the fig leaves from some naked thoughts. From what we have seen then, the concept of cynicism contains more than a first glance would lead us to expect. It is one of those things that, if given an inch, will take a mile. Our curiosity aroused, we wanted at first to see what's really in it, and thereby, we noticed it too late, we experienced something that boggles our minds. We wanted to learn something about cynicism, and discovered in doing so that it has long since brought us under its domination. To this point, we have presented the concept of cynicism in two versions. A third clearly emerges after Chapter 7, the Cabinet of Cynics. The first says, cynicism is enlightened false consciousness, unhappy consciousness in modernized form. Our approach here is intuitive, starting with a paradox. It articulates an uneasiness that sees the modern world steeped in cultural insanities, false hopes and their disappointment, in the progress of madness and the suspension of reason, in the deep schinism that runs through modern consciousness and that seems to separate the rational and the real, what we know and what we do from each other for all time. In the description we achieved a pathography that probed schizoid phenomena. It tried to find words for the perversely complicated structure of a consciousness that has become reflective and is almost more melancholy than false. It is a consciousness that, under the compulsions of self-preservation, continues to run itself, though run down, in permanent moral self-denial. In the second version, the concept of cynicism assumes a historical dimension. Attention becomes apparent that, in the ancient critique of civilization, had first found expression under the name of cynicism, the urge of individuals to maintain themselves as fully rational living beings against the distortions and semi-rationalities of their societies. Existence in resistance, in laughter, in refusal, in the appeal to the whole of nature and a full life. It begins as plebeian individualism, pantomimic, wily and quick-witted. Some of this trickles through to the more serious Stoa. Iridescent transitions to Christianity are affected, but die out to the extent that Christian theology negates and even damns the ancient heathen inheritance. We reserved the concept of cynicism for the reply of the rulers and the ruling culture to the cynical provocation. They definitely see that there is an element of truth in it, but proceed with oppression. From now on, they know what they do. The concept here undergoes a split into the dichotomy, cynicism, cynicism, that, in substance, corresponds to resistance and repression, or more precisely, self-embodiment and resistance, and self-splitting and repression. The phenomena of cynicism is thereby separated from its historical origin, and becomes a type that crops up again and again historically whenever, in crisis civilizations and civilization crises, consciousnesses clash with each other. Cynicism and cynicism are, accordingly, constants in our history, typical forms of a polemical consciousness, from below and from above. In them, the opposition of high culture and people's culture is lived out as the exposure of paradoxes within high cultural ethics. Here, the third version of the concept of cynicism continues on to a phenomenology of polemical forms of consciousness. The polemic always revolves around the correct conception of the truth as naked truth. Cynical thinking, namely, can arise only when two views of things have become possible, an official and an unofficial view, a veiled and a naked view, one from the viewpoint of heroes and one from the viewpoint of valets. In a culture in which one is regularly told lies, one wants to know not merely the truth, but the naked truth. Where that cannot be, that is not allowed to be. One has to draw out what the naked facts look like, no matter what morality has to say about it. In a certain way, ruling and lying are synonyms. The truths of rulers and that of servants are different. In this phenomenological citing of contestable forms of consciousness, we must sublate, aufheben, the bias in favour of the cynical standpoint. At first we will have to patiently and somewhat dryly look at how, in 6 great arenas of values, the military, politics, sexuality, medicine, religion, and knowledge theory, cynical and cynical consciousnesses confront, attack, retaliate against each other, qualify each other, provoke each other, and finally get to know and neutralize each other. In the Cardinal Cynicisms, the contours of a combative history of ideas emerge. Such a history describes that labour on the ideal that stands at the heart of high cultural ethics. That this is not a phenomenology of spirit in the Hegelian sense will become clear. Likewise, it has little to do with Husserlian phenomenology, apart from the irrepressible philosophical battle cry, "Let's get down to things."